There's a truth most people never want to face. If you don't feel the weight of your own potential, you will never create the pressure required to rise to it. And if you don't create that pressure yourself, life will do it for you, brutally, unexpectedly, and without mercy. Every day you're either being pulled forward by intention or dragged backward by comfort. There is no middle ground. And the difference between the life you want and the life you're living right now is not motivation, not luck, not opportunity. It's the ability to force yourself to do what your emotions refuse to cooperate with. Most people wait. They wait for clarity. They wait for inspiration. They wait for the right moment. But leaders, real leaders of their own life, don't wait. They act, they move, they build, they decide. They train their mind the way an athlete trains their body, with structure, precision, and uncompromising standards. That's the difference. Not noise, not hype, not raw emotion. Clarity, authority, precision, timing. These 4 pillars separate those who change their lives from those who simply talk about it. Clarity, knowing exactly what you want and refusing to settle for anything small. Authority, taking ownership of your choices instead of blaming your circumstances. Precision, cutting excuses, cutting distractions, cutting the emotional clutter that keeps you stuck. Timing, understanding that the only real power is in the present moment, not someday, not later, not when life becomes easier. And here's the shift that will change the next 90 minutes of your life. Improvement doesn't come from feeling better. Improvement comes from forcing yourself to do better, especially when you don't want to. Think about the moments that shaped you, not the comfortable ones, not the days when everything flowed smoothly, but the days when you didn't have the energy, you didn't have the encouragement, when you didn't have the motivation, and yet something inside you refused to quit. That's the muscle we're about to build. The ability to override your emotions with commitment, to override resistance with discipline, to override hesitation with movement. In these 90 minutes, you're going to learn how to break the cycle of laziness, how to take back control from a scattered mind, how to build ruthless self-accountability, how to rewire your identity through action, how to eliminate the distractions that run your life, how to do hard things on purpose, how to stop negotiating with your feelings, how to finish what you start, and how to repeat these actions until improvement becomes your default setting. 10 chapters. Each one sharp, each one practical, each one designed to hit the places where discipline breaks down and rebuild that stronger. Every chapter has one purpose: to turn you from a person who hopes into a person who executes. You will face the pain that's been holding you back. You will understand the principle that unlocks the behavior. You will visualize the picture, the contrast between the life you're living and the life you could live. You will practice concrete steps you can apply immediately. You will confront the uncomfortable prompts, the questions that force honesty. And you will receive a punchline, a short command that burns itself into your memory and guides your choices moving forward. This is not a soft conversation. This is not comfort. This is not motivation that fades when the music stops. This is the blueprint for forcing yourself to improve your life. Not through luck, not through waiting, but through deliberate, disciplined self-mastery. You don't need to become a different person overnight. You only need to become someone who refuses to stay the same. Your potential doesn't need more time. It needs more pressure. Your goals don't need more dreaming. They need more discipline. Your future doesn't need more wishing. It needs more action. So take a breath. Stand a little taller. Prepare to confront the truth you've been avoiding. You don't need to be louder. You don't need to be perfect. You don't need to wait for a sign. You need to be stronger, clearer, more intentional, more disciplined, more responsible for the life that only you can build. Let's begin. Chapter 1. Break the cycle of laziness. Laziness is not a personality flaw. It is a cycle, a self-reinforcing loop that grows stronger every time you choose comfort over responsibility. And the most dangerous part is how quietly it forms. It never announces itself. It never shows up as a loud declaration. It begins as a whisper. Do it later. Then it becomes a pattern. I'll start tomorrow. Eventually, it becomes your identity. This is just the way I am. That whisper is how dreams die. Not through failure, not through obstacles, but through delay, through the tiny, comfortable choices that feel harmless in the moment, but slowly suffocate the life you want. The real pain of laziness isn't the tasks left undone. It's the erosion of self-respect. Every time you break a promise to yourself, even a small one, you teach your mind that your words don't matter. You learn to distrust your own intentions. You start living with the silent frustration of knowing you're capable of more, yet unable to make yourself do it. That's the wound laziness creates. A wound that doesn't bleed, but spreads. Most people believe laziness is about lacking motivation. They tell themselves, I'll work when I feel ready. But ready never comes. Motivation rises and falls like the weather, and building your life based on something that unstable guarantees failure. The people who change their lives are not the people who feel motivated. They are the people who act without it. You don't end laziness by waiting for a spark. You end it by building discipline powerful enough to override your emotions. That's the principle that changes everything. You don't overcome laziness by feeling different. You overcome laziness by acting differently. Imagine standing in front of two doors. Behind the first door lies comfort, warmth, ease, familiarity. The past version of you lives there. The version that avoids discomfort, postpones responsibility, and seeks pleasure before purpose. Behind the second door lies growth. This door is heavier, harder to open, and colder at first. But everything you want lives behind it. Clarity, progress, strength, respect, confidence. Laziness is simply the habit of choosing the first door without thinking. Breaking the cycle begins when you notice the urge for comfort and choose the second door anyway. Not because you feel like it, but because it is the only door that leads somewhere new. Picture two versions of your day. In the first version, you wake up and immediately grab your phone. You scroll because it's easy, because your mind wants stimulation without effort. 10 minutes become 30. 30 becomes 60. Soon the day slips away from you. You start tasks late, skip the difficult ones, and end the evening with that heavy, familiar disappointment. In the second version, you feel the same resistance, the same urge to stay comfortable. But instead of obeying it, you interrupt it. You sit up. You put your feet on the floor. You take one breath and begin your day with intention instead of impulse. You do this not because you suddenly feel inspired, but because you refuse to let the old version of yourself lead anymore. That small moment, the interruption, is everything. Laziness thrives on momentum, on the smooth slide into comfort. You break the cycle by disrupting that slide, by inserting one conscious action into a pattern that used to run automatically. Now imagine building a life where that interruption becomes your default. A life where actions are determined by decisions, not emotions. That is the life discipline builds. And it starts with a few simple but powerful practices. The first practice is lowering the activation barrier. The reason most people don't start is because they imagine the entire task at once. The brain panics, freezes, retreats. So you shrink the task until the brain has nothing left to fear. Start for 2 minutes. Not 20. Not 2 hours, 2 minutes. If you start, you'll continue. If you wait to feel ready, you'll never move. The second practice is removing negotiation. Laziness wins when you give yourself time to argue with your responsibility. The longer you think about doing the thing, the less likely you are to do it. So you implement the no negotiation rule. When it's time to act, you act. No bargaining. No delay, no emotional debate. The third practice is engineering friction around your bad habits. Put your phone in another room. Turn off notifications. Keep your workspace clean. Make laziness inconvenient and productivity easier. Your environment either fights for you or against you. And if you don't shape it intentionally, it will shape you by default. The fourth practice is creating identity momentum. Every action you take sends a message to yourself about who you are. When you keep skipping tasks, you reinforce the identity of someone who breaks commitments. When you complete tasks, even small ones, you reinforce the identity of someone who follows through. And identity always wins over motivation. If you want to stop being lazy, stop identifying as someone who is. Begin identifying as someone who acts, who finishes, who follows through, who chooses growth over comfort. Identity is not something you're born with. It's something you build, one choice at a time. And the final practice is ending the day with accountability. Not guilt, not shame, not self-judgment. Accountability. You look at what you planned and what you actually did. You tell yourself the truth. You take ownership of what you avoided, and you commit to doing one thing differently tomorrow. Change begins with honesty, not perfection. Now ask yourself the questions that break the old pattern. What am I avoiding because it's uncomfortable? What would my life look like if I stopped postponing everything? What one action today would make me proud of myself? These questions interrupt the automatic cycle and force awareness. And awareness is the first step toward mastery. You're not lazy. You're trained in the habit of acting like someone who is, and habits can be rewritten, patterns can be replaced, cycles can be broken. The moment you decide that comfort no longer gets to run your life is the moment everything changes. Remember this. You don't need to feel ready. You need to begin. Chapter 2. Control your mind before it controls you. A chaotic mind is the silent enemy of progress. Most people don't lose because they lack talent, intelligence, or opportunity. They lose because their mind is scattered, reactive, overstimulated, and constantly pulled toward whatever feels easiest in the moment. A distracted mind cannot lead a disciplined life, and if you don't take control of your mind, it will take control of you. Slowly, quietly, and completely. The pain begins in small moments. You want to work, but your mind drifts. You want to focus, but your attention fractures. You want to change your life, but you feel pulled by impulses you never chose. And then frustration hits. Why can't I stay focused? Why do my thoughts run me instead of the other way around? Why do I feel like a prisoner inside my own head? That frustration is not weakness. It's the natural result of living in a world designed to hijack your attention. Notifications, noise, social media, instant gratification. Everything around you competes for control of your mental energy. And the more you allow your mind to react to every stimulus, the less power you have over your own direction. You can't improve your life if you can't control the instrument that creates every improvement, your mind. But here's the truth that transforms everything. A mind without direction will always return to comfort. A mind with direction will always move toward growth. Control is not about suppressing thoughts. It's about choosing which ones you give power to. Imagine your mind as a river. When left unattended, it overflows, floods, and destroys the structures you've built. But when guided, when channeled through deliberate barriers and pathways, the same river becomes a force of creation, not destruction. The goal is not to stop the river. The goal is to guide it. Picture 2 days from your own life. In the first day, your mind is your master. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Your thoughts are chaotic within seconds. Messages pulling you one way, social media pulling you another, a dozen micro pressures hijacking your emotional state before you even stand up. You try to work, but your mind shifts every few minutes. You start tasks you don't finish. You chase impulses instead of decisions. And at the end of the day, you feel exhausted without accomplishing anything meaningful. That exhaustion isn't from the work. It's from fighting your own mind all day. In the second day, your mind becomes your instrument. You wake with intention. You don't check your phone. You sit, breathe, and allow your thoughts to settle. You choose the first thing you will focus on. You claim ownership before the world's noise gets a chance to influence you. Throughout the day, you notice distractions immediately. Instead of following them, You return to your chosen task. You work with clarity, not chaos. And the mind that once dragged you now obeys you. That contrast is the essence of control. The shift from being led by impulses to leading your mind with purpose. Control doesn't come from intensity. It comes from structure. You build it gradually through small mental practices, repeated consistently until they form a new identity. And the first practice is the one decision morning. The moment you wake up is the moment your mental direction is decided. If you begin the day by reacting, checking notifications, scrolling, responding, you hand your mind over to the world. If you begin by choosing what matters, you reclaim your mental sovereignty. For the first hour of the day, you do not check anything that wants your attention. You only check what you choose. This is not about discipline for its own sake. It is about establishing authority. You enter the day as a leader of your mind, not a follower of distractions. The second practice is thought containment. Your mind will always generate more thoughts than you can handle. Left unmanaged, these thoughts scatter your focus and drain your willpower. So you create the mental container. Every time a non-urgent thought appears, a worry, a random idea, an unrelated task, you write it down instead of thinking about it. This simple act weakens the thought's emotional grip. It tells your mind, not now, you are noted. You will be handled on my terms. Thought containment turns mental chaos into mental clarity. The third practice is single task dominance. The modern world worships multitasking, but multitasking destroys depth, quality, and momentum. You train your mind to do one thing at a time and finish what you start. That's how you break the cycle of scattered energy. When you sit to work, you choose one target. You remove all distractions. You commit fully for a fixed block of time. You do not switch tasks. The brain builds mental strength through sustained attention, not fragmented effort. The fourth practice is interrupting the impulse loop. Laziness and distraction operate through impulse. A small desire appears to check your phone, to switch tasks, to escape discomfort. And you follow it before you even realize you made a choice. To regain control, you interrupt the impulse. When the urge hits, you pause for 3 seconds. You breathe. You decide. That pause is a reclaiming of power. It tells your mind, you are not in charge. I am. Over time, this 3-second pause becomes a shield against self-sabotage. The fifth practice is mental decluttering through silence. Your mind cannot organize itself when it is drowning in constant noise. So at least once each day, you sit in silence. No screens, no talking, no stimulation. Just breathing and observing your thoughts without reacting to them. This silence is not for relaxation, it is for authority. It is a reset button for the mind, a way to lower its internal temperature and regain clarity. The most disciplined people in the world are not the loudest. They are the ones who can sit with themselves without needing escape. And the final practice is identity anchoring. Your mind obeys the identity you reinforce. If you believe you have a weak mind, you will act like someone with a weak mind. If you believe you are easily distracted, you will behave accordingly. But when you declare, internally and repeatedly, I control my mind, your thoughts begin to align with that identity. You stop treating focus as a struggle and start treating it as a standard. Identity creates behavior. Behavior reinforces identity. And the cycle begins working in your favor instead of against you. Now, ask yourself the questions that reveal whether your mind is working for you or against you. What thoughts have been controlling my decisions instead of supporting them? What impulses have I been obeying without awareness? What would my life look like if my mind followed my direction instead of reacting to everything around me? These questions pull unconscious patterns into the light. Awareness is where control begins. Your mind is powerful, more powerful than you realize. But it is not designed to lead itself. It needs structure. It needs limits. It needs direction. When you fail to provide that direction, the mind defaults to comfort, distraction, and emotional noise. When you lead it with authority, it becomes your greatest asset. Remember this. If you don't control your mind will control you. Chapter 3. Build ruthless self-accountability. There is a turning point in every person's life. A moment where you realize no one is coming to save you. No one is going to force you to change, and no one is responsible for your breakthroughs except you. This realization is uncomfortable at first, even painful, because accountability removes the illusions that make us feel better in the short term. But it is also the moment your life finally becomes yours again. Without accountability, improvement is impossible. With it, everything becomes possible. The pain of lacking accountability is quiet but destructive. Days pass without progress. Tasks remain unfinished, and goals stay distant. You keep telling yourself stories. I'll start next week. I was too tired today. Life is too busy right now. And these stories soften the guilt just enough to continue the cycle. But deep down, you feel the weight. You know when you're not showing up. You know when you're playing small, and that internal conflict slowly dissolves your confidence. The truth is simple. People don't fail because they don't know what to do. They fail because they don't hold themselves responsible for doing it. You can read 100 books, watch endless videos, or plan the perfect routines. But without accountability, all of it collapses. Knowledge without accountability becomes procrastination disguised as preparation. Here is the principle that changes everything. What you do consistently becomes who you are, and what you track consistently becomes what you improve. Accountability is the bridge between intention and execution. Without that bridge, everything you want stays in your head instead of becoming real in your life. Imagine standing in front of a mirror that reflects not your appearance, but your actions. Not who you pretend to be, but who you really are when no one is watching. Most people avoid that mirror. They distract themselves, justify their choices, or blame external circumstances because facing that reflection requires courage. But accountability forces you to look. It forces you to confront the gap between your standards and your behavior. And facing that gap is the path to growth. Picture two versions of you. In the first version, you drift through your days reacting instead of leading. You do things when you feel like it. You avoid anything that demands discipline. You break commitments to yourself without thinking twice because there are no consequences when no one sees. Your life feels foggy, unstructured, inconsistent. You start many things, finish few, and constantly feel like you're falling behind. In the second version, accountability is non-negotiable. You track your actions, you measure your progress, you tell yourself the truth even when it hurts. You end each day knowing exactly what you did and what you didn't do. You make decisions based on standards, not mood. Your life becomes sharper, cleaner, more intentional. You begin to trust yourself again, and that trust becomes momentum. The contrast between these two versions is the difference between drifting and building, between existing and evolving. To build ruthless accountability, you need a system that exposes the truth, strengthens your identity, and removes the room for excuses. The first practice is the daily scorecard. This is not a journal of feelings. It is a record of actions. At the end of each day, you write down 3 things: what you committed to, what you actually did, and where you broke your promise to yourself. You do not sugarcoat. You do not justify. You document reality. This small practice forces clarity. You can't change what you refuse to acknowledge. The second practice is the zero excuse rule. Most excuses sound reasonable. I was tired. It was a stressful day. I didn't have time. But accountability dissolves those illusions. Tired people still show up. Busy people still make time. Stressed people still take action. The difference isn't circumstance. It's standard. The zero excuse rule trains you to stop negotiating with your limitations. When you commit, you follow through, regardless of how you feel. This rewires your identity faster than almost anything else. The third practice is owning the consequences. Accountability means that everything in your life, your habits, your results, your routine, your progress, is a reflection of the decisions you make daily. Not luck, not fate, not other people. You. This is not about blaming yourself. It's about empowering yourself. When you claim responsibility, you also claim control. And control is where transformation begins. The fourth practice is the no-escape plan. You design your environment so that your goals are unavoidable. If you want to work out, you lay out your clothes the night before. If you want to read, you keep the book on your desk. If you want to write, you open the document before bed so it's the first thing you see in the morning. Accountability becomes easier when you remove the distance between intention and action. The fifth practice is micro-commitments. Many people break their goals because they commit to things too large to maintain. Accountability collapses under unrealistic expectations. Instead, you commit to small, specific, measurable actions you can do every single day. 10 push-ups, 10 minutes of reading, one task completed fully. These micro-commitments build consistency, and consistency builds identity. The sixth practice is radical honesty with yourself. Most people lie to themselves more than they lie to anyone else. They pretend they're trying when they barely put in effort. They pretend they're improving when they're repeating the same habits. They pretend they're stuck when they simply haven't pushed. Radical honesty destroys the illusions that hold you back. It is the foundation of accountability. Ask yourself the questions that expose the truth and open the path forward. What am I pretending not to notice about my behavior? Where am I breaking promises that I would never break if someone else were counting on me? What am I avoiding because I'm afraid of being a beginner again? If every part of my life were measured, what would those measurements reveal? These questions aren't comfortable, but comfort is the enemy of accountability. Growth requires reality. Clear, unfiltered, unapologetic reality. When you build ruthless accountability, you stop relying on motivation and start relying on standards. You stop hoping for discipline and start acting like someone who has it. You stop letting your feelings dictate your choices and start letting your commitments dictate your actions. You evolve from someone who talks about improvement into someone who lives it. And slowly, something powerful begins to happen. You start trusting yourself again. You begin believing that your intentions matter. You start seeing evidence that you can follow through, that you can change, that you can become the person you've always wanted to be. Accountability rebuilds the self-belief that laziness and inconsistency destroy. Your life is shaped by the choices you make when no one is watching. Accountability brings those choices into the light. It removes the shadows where excuses hide. It replaces confusion with clarity, hesitation with commitment, and chaos with structure. And when you finally understand that everything in your life is a result of what you accept or refuse to accept, you step into a level of power most people never reach. Remember this: accountability is the foundation of every transformation. Own your actions, and you will own your life. Chapter 4. Rewire your identity through action. Every meaningful change in your life begins with a shift in identity. Not motivation, not willpower. Identity, because you will never rise higher than the story you tell yourself about who you are. People fail not because they can't improve, but because they're trapped in an outdated identity. An identity built from old mistakes, old patterns, and old limitations. They keep acting like the person they used to be instead of the person they want to become. And that's the real pain, living today with the identity of someone you no longer wish to be. You tell yourself you want discipline, but deep down, you believe you're inconsistent. You tell yourself you want success, but you still see yourself as someone who struggles. You tell yourself you want change, but you think like the old version of you, the one who quits, avoids discomfort, and fears failure. Identity becomes the anchor holding your life in place, even when you try to move forward. Conflict between who you are and who you believe you are creates internal friction. You want to take action, but the subconscious voice whispers, "This isn't you." That whisper alone is powerful enough to sabotage your progress. But here's the truth that dissolves the illusion. Identity is not fixed. Identity is trained. And the fastest way to rewrite your identity is through action, not affirmation. You don't become disciplined by telling yourself you're disciplined. You become disciplined by doing disciplined things. You don't become confident by repeating positive thoughts. You become confident by taking action even when you're scared. You don't become the kind of person who finishes what you start by hoping for it. You become that person by finishing again and again until the act becomes part of who you are. Imagine your identity as a wall made of bricks. Every action is a brick you lay. Every habit, every task completed, every decision you make strengthens a particular version of you. If you repeatedly choose laziness, avoidance, or distraction, you reinforce the identity of someone who breaks promises to themselves. But when you choose action, even small action, you begin constructing a new identity, brick by brick, day by day. Picture two people building their lives. The first person says, "I want to be disciplined," but waits to feel ready. They start projects, but never finish. They set goals, but abandon them the moment the initial excitement fades. Their actions contradict their desires, and over time, they internalize the belief that they are someone who can't follow through. The identity becomes self-fulfilling. They see themselves as inconsistent, so they act inconsistently. The second person feels the same doubts, the same resistance, the same fear. But instead of waiting to feel ready, they act anyway. They start with small commitments and honor them. They complete tasks even when they don't want to. They set standards and uphold them regardless of mood. Slowly, without realizing it, they begin seeing themselves differently. I'm someone who follows through. I'm someone who does the hard things. I'm someone who shows up. That identity becomes the foundation for bigger decisions, stronger habits, and larger goals. The difference between these two people has nothing to do with talent or intelligence. It has everything to do with identity. And identity is shaped by action. To rewire your identity, you must begin the simplest and most powerful practice, the "I am the person who" declaration. This is not an affirmation. It is a contract. I am the person who finishes what I start. I am the person who keeps promises to myself. I am the person who trains even when I don't want to. I am the person who chooses growth over comfort. But this declaration only becomes real through behavior. The moment you act in alignment with that statement, you strengthen it. The moment you contradict it, you weaken it. Identity is shaped through repetition, not words. The next practice is identity stacking. Every day, choose one action that aligns with the person you want to become. 1, not 10, not 20. One meaningful action completed with full intention. Small actions compound. Small integrity compounds. Small proof compounds. Identity grows by accumulation, not intensity. A single day of perfection accomplishes nothing. A series of small wins transforms your sense of self. Then comes the discipline of completion. You cannot build a strong identity if you constantly leave things unfinished. Every unfinished task is a fracture in your identity, a signal that you cannot rely on yourself. To break this pattern, you implement the finish line rule. If you start something, you finish it, unless continuing becomes genuinely impossible. Not uncomfortable, not boring, impossible. Every time you cross the finish line, you reinforce the identity of someone who completes. Another powerful practice is environmental alignment. Your identity is not just shaped internally. It is shaped by what surrounds you. Your environment either supports your new identity or drags you back into the old one. If you want to be someone who trains daily, your environment should make training easy. If you want to be someone who reads, books should be visible and accessible. If you want to be someone who works deeply, your workspace must reflect clarity, not chaos. Your environment is your silent accountability partner. There is also the identity audit, a daily moment where you confront the truth. Did I act like the person I want to become today? This question is uncomfortable, but discomfort is the curriculum of growth. When the answer is yes, you reinforce the identity. When the answer is no, you redirect tomorrow with clarity instead of shame. Accountability without self-punishment is the fuel of transformation. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal the gap between who you are and who you could be. What identity have I been carrying that no longer serves me? What actions am I taking that belong to my old self, not my future self? If someone observed my daily behavior, who would they say I am becoming? What is one action today that aligns with the identity I want? These questions force honesty. Honesty forces change. Identity is built on truth, not illusion. There is something powerful that happens when your actions and your identity finally match. Another kind of confidence emerges, not the loud, superficial kind, but a quiet, unshakable one. You no longer need to convince yourself that you can change because you have evidence. You no longer need to hope for discipline because you have proof. You no longer need to rely on motivation because identity has taken over. And once identity takes over, everything gets easier. Actions that used to feel heavy become natural. Habits that once felt impossible become automatic. The mind stops fighting you and starts supporting you. Progress becomes predictable instead of accidental. You are not locked into the identity you currently hold. You are not defined by your past failures or your old habits. You are defined by what you repeatedly do from this moment forward. The future version of you is waiting, not in imagination, but in the next disciplined action you choose. Remember this: you don't change your life by changing your thoughts. You change your life by changing your identity. And identity changes through action. Chapter 5. Eliminate the distractions that control. Your distraction is the enemy you never see coming. It feels harmless, subtle, even comforting. But it is responsible for more wasted potential than failure, fear, or insecurity combined. People imagine that their biggest obstacles are external: lack of time, lack of opportunity, lack of support. But the truth is much simpler and far more uncomfortable. Most people do not lose because they are incapable. They lose because they cannot stay focused long enough to reach the life they are capable of. The real pain begins the moment you realize how much distraction has cost you. Hours that disappeared into meaningless scrolling. Tasks delayed because you couldn't stay present. Projects abandoned because your attention was constantly fractured. Life doesn't fall apart in a dramatic collapse. It dissolves quietly, moment by moment, through tiny decisions that pull you away from what matters. And the worst part is that you often don't even notice it happening. Distractions shape your life without your permission. They decide how you spend your days, how you use your energy, and how you feel about yourself. Every time you move toward a goal, distraction shows up like a shadow, offering something easier, something more instantly rewarding, something that requires no discomfort, no focus, no growth. And because the brain loves pleasure more than progress, distraction becomes seductive. It becomes familiar. It becomes normal. But here's the truth you must face. Your life will be determined by what you choose to ignore as much as by what you choose to pursue. If you cannot eliminate distractions, you will never build discipline. And without discipline, improvement is impossible. Distraction doesn't just steal your time, it steals your identity. Every time you give in to it, you reinforce the belief that you are someone who cannot stay in control. And once you lose that belief, your entire foundation cracks. Imagine your attention as currency, the most valuable currency you will ever own. Every time you scroll without thinking, you're spending it. Every time you bounce between tasks, you're spending it. Every time you let noise interrupt your work, you're spending it. And the painful truth is that most people are spending all of their attention on things that bring them nothing in return. Now picture two different lives shaped by attention. In the first life, distractions run everything. You wake up and immediately check your phone. Your mind becomes fragmented within seconds, pulled by messages, pulled by notifications, pulled by the endless stream of stimulation. You try to work, but your attention keeps slipping. You start things you don't finish. You do a little of everything and complete nothing. At the end of the day, you're drained, unfocused, disappointed, and confused about why you're not making progress. But the answer is simple. You are not present long enough for anything meaningful to grow. In the second life, you own your attention. You decide what enters your mind, not algorithms, not impulses, not external noise. You work on one thing at a time. You eliminate what weakens your focus. You build blocks of deep concentration where nothing interrupts you, and your results begin to compound. You feel stronger, sharper, more grounded. You start trusting yourself again because you can finally stay with your intentions long enough to see them evolve into results. That contrast is the difference between a distracted life and a directed life. And if you want to force yourself to improve, you must learn to eliminate the distractions that control you. The first practice is reclaiming the beginning of your day. The morning sets your mental temperature. If you start your day by reacting, by checking notifications, by scanning social media, by letting other people's priorities intrude into your head, your attention becomes scattered before you even begin. But when you start your day with silence, clarity, and intention, you take control before the world has the chance to steal it. You don't need a perfect morning routine. You need ownership. For the first hour of your day, nothing external gets to pull your attention. No phone, no messages, no digital noise. You begin with intention, not reaction. The second practice is creating a distraction-free environment. Willpower is weak when the environment is full of temptations. If your phone is within reach, your brain will reach for it. If your workspace is cluttered, your mind will mirror that clutter. If noise is constant, focus will be impossible. You don't need more discipline. You need fewer triggers. You take the phone out of the room, you clear your desk, you remove unnecessary tabs, you design your environment to support the person you want to become. The third practice is building deep work sessions. Most progress does not come from scattered effort. It comes from uninterrupted concentration. You choose one task, one mission, one target, and you work on it without switching. Even 20 minutes of deep focus is more powerful than 3 hours of multitasking. During these sessions, you eliminate everything except the task. No switching, no jumping, no drifting. You train your brain to stay. The fourth practice is managing your dopamine. Modern distractions hijack your brain's reward system. Every notification, every like, every clip gives you a tiny spike of dopamine. But those spikes weaken your ability to focus. You must reduce your dependency on stimulation. You set boundaries around social media. You choose specific windows to check your phone. You stop giving your brain constant hits of gratification. The less stimulation you rely on, the more focus you regain. The fifth practice is closing loops. Every unfinished task in your mind creates mental noise. The brain hates open loops, unresolved problems, half-completed work, unmade decisions. This noise pulls your attention even when you're not thinking about it. To eliminate distractions, you must close loops. You finish small tasks immediately. You clarify decisions. You write down responsibilities instead of carrying them mentally. The fewer open loops you have, the quieter your mind becomes. The sixth practice is strengthening your ability to say no. Most distractions come disguised as opportunities, invitations, or requests. Every time you say yes to something that doesn't matter, you say no to something that does. You cannot protect your focus if you fear disappointing people. You cannot protect your time if you try to please everyone. Learning to say no, calmly, clearly, firmly, is one of the greatest acts of self-discipline you can develop. Now, ask yourself the questions that reveal where distraction controls your life. What is stealing my attention every day without giving anything back? What habits make me feel disappointed in myself after I do them? What would my days look like if I eliminated the top 3 sources of noise? What could I accomplish if I gave myself 90 minutes of deep, uninterrupted focus each day? These questions expose the distractions that run your life. And the moment you identify them, you take away half their power. A focused life is not built through intensity, it is built through subtraction, removing noise, removing clutter, removing the things that weaken your direction. Every distraction you eliminate becomes a step toward the life you want. Every interruption you refuse becomes a moment of regained control. Every block of time you protect becomes proof that you are becoming someone who leads your mind instead of being led by your impulses. You cannot force yourself to improve if you are constantly fighting distraction. Improvement requires presence. Discipline requires clarity. Growth requires attention, and attention is your most valuable resource. The foundation of your progress, the engine of your potential, the gatekeeper of your future. Remember this: your life will be shaped not by what distracts you, but by what you choose to eliminate. Control your attention, and you will control your future. Chapter 6. Do hard things on purpose. Most people spend their lives avoiding difficulty. They treat discomfort like a threat, inconvenience like a burden, and challenge like something to escape. But what they don't realize is that avoiding hard things doesn't protect them, it weakens them. Every time you choose comfort over challenge, you teach your mind to retreat. You teach your body to soften. You teach your willpower to collapse. And slowly, quietly, you become someone who can't handle pressure, can't stay consistent, and can't push through the moments that actually matter. That is the real pain of avoiding hard things. It shrinks you. It makes your world smaller. It strips away your confidence, your resilience, your self-respect. You begin to fear challenges not because they are impossible, but because you've forgotten what you're capable of. You start believing difficulty is a sign that something is wrong, rather than a sign that something important is happening. But here is the truth that rebuilds everything. Your brain adapts to whatever you repeatedly do, and it grows stronger only when you do hard things on purpose. Not accidentally, not occasionally, not when life forces you, but deliberately, consistently, intentionally. Because you know that growth requires pressure. Doing hard things is the training ground of discipline. It is where identity is reshaped, where confidence is rebuilt, where the old version of you dissolves and the new version emerges. Comfort never created a powerful human being. Hard things did. Imagine your life as a battlefield. On one side are the forces that weaken you: laziness, fear, distraction, hesitation. On the other side are the forces that strengthen you: consistency, courage, focus, resilience. Every day, you choose which side wins, and the battle is always won in the smallest moments. The moments where you feel resistance, the moments where you want to quit, the moments where the easier option calls your name. If you avoid hard things, the weaker side wins. But when you choose the harder path on purpose, you build a mind that doesn't crumble under pressure. You build a will that doesn't bend when life becomes intense. You build a self you can rely on. Picture two versions of your life. In the first version, you avoid anything uncomfortable. You skip the workout because it's tiring. You avoid difficult conversations because they're awkward. You delay your goals because they require effort. And over time, your comfort zone tightens around you like a cage. You don't grow. You don't improve. You survive, but you never strengthen. You drift through life with soft habits and a soft mind. In the second version, you do hard things on purpose. You wake up when you said you would. You push through the workout instead of quitting early. You say what needs to be said, even when your voice shakes. You choose the action that demands effort rather than the one that offers ease. And slowly, you build a foundation of discipline that transforms your entire identity. You become someone who can handle pressure, someone who doesn't break under stress, someone who acts instead of avoids. The difference between these two lives is not luck or talent. It is the daily choice to lean into discomfort instead of running from it. Doing hard things is both a skill and a practice. It is developed through repetition, not inspiration. You don't wait to feel brave. You don't wait to feel motivated. You act first, and feelings follow. The first practice is reframing discomfort. Most people interpret discomfort as danger. They feel resistance and think, I can't do this, or this is too much. But discomfort is a signal of growth, not threat. It means you are expanding your limits. It means you are stepping into a new version of yourself. Instead of running from discomfort, you train yourself to recognize it as the moment your life is stretching, the moment that matters. The second practice is controlled adversity. You choose one difficult thing each day and you do it. Not because you want to, but because it sharpens you. It could be waking up earlier, finishing a difficult task, enduring cold water, saying no when you usually fold, or staying focused when your mind wants to wander. These small acts of adversity create mental toughness, and mental toughness becomes your competitive advantage in life. The third practice is building resilience through repetition. Hard things don't get easier because the world becomes softer. They get easier because you become stronger. When you repeatedly face difficulty instead of avoiding it, your brain adapts. Your emotions stabilize. Your confidence grows. You stop being surprised by resistance, and you start expecting it, even welcoming it. That shift is where transformation begins. The fourth practice is removing the option to quit. When you allow yourself to back out, retreat, or switch to something easier, your mind learns that quitting is acceptable. To eliminate this pattern, you create non-negotiables. If you commit to a workout, you finish it. If you commit to a project, you follow through. If you commit to a routine, you honor it. Quitting becomes off limits. Your brain learns that you are someone who completes, not someone who collapses. The fifth practice is embracing the emotional storm. Hard things don't only challenge your body, they challenge your emotions. Frustration, fear, self-doubt, impatience. Most people break because they misinterpret these emotions as signals to stop. But they are simply part of the process. When the emotional storm hits, you breathe. You stay steady, and you continue. You teach your mind that feelings are not commands, they are just noise. The sixth practice is grounding yourself in identity. When you see yourself as someone who avoids difficulty, every challenge feels overwhelming. But when you identify as someone who does hard things, your mind shifts. You no longer ask, "Can I do this?" You ask, "What is required of me?" Identity becomes the engine of discipline, a steady force carrying you through resistance. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal your relationship with difficulty. What hard thing have I been avoiding that I know would change my life if I faced it? What pattern of avoidance has weakened me over the years? Who would I become if I made discomfort my daily training ground instead of something to fear? What is one hard thing I can do today to reclaim my strength? These questions break the illusion that hard things exist to punish you. They exist to build you. They exist to expand your limits. They exist to prepare you for a life that requires resilience, not fragility. Your life will not get easier, but you can get stronger. You can become someone who doesn't crumble when things get intense, someone who thrives under pressure, someone who acts while others hesitate, someone who rises when others collapse. That version of you does not come from comfort. It comes from doing hard things on purpose. Strength is not given. It is built. It is built through discipline, built through adversity, built through moments when you choose the harder path. Not because you enjoy it, but because you understand the cost of avoiding it. Remember this: you do not become strong by living an easy life. You become strong by choosing what is difficult and doing it anyway. Chapter 7. Build mental toughness through discipline. Mental toughness is not something you're born with. It's something you build through choices, through pressure, through deliberate acts of discipline. Most people imagine mental toughness as a dramatic trait reserved for extraordinary individuals, but the truth is much simpler. Toughness is the result of doing what needs to be done, even when your emotions scream for escape. It is the ability to remain steady when everything inside you wants to break. And without it, your goals will always stay out of reach. The real pain of lacking mental toughness shows up in the smallest moments. You say you will do something and then quit the moment it becomes uncomfortable. You feel motivated in the morning and drained by the afternoon. You start with energy but fall apart at the first sign of pressure. And slowly, you begin to lose trust in yourself. You lose confidence. You lose the sense that you can handle life. When you lack toughness, every challenge feels heavier than it should. Every setback feels personal, and every obstacle feels like a sign that you should stop. But here's the truth that cuts through the illusion. Mental toughness is built through disciplined action, not emotional comfort. You do not think your way into being stronger. Act your way into it. You face resistance willingly. You choose discomfort intentionally. You build the capacity to endure pressure over time, through repetition, until difficulty no longer breaks you. It sharpens you. Imagine your mind as a muscle. If you never challenge it, it atrophies. If you constantly seek comfort, it weakens. But when you push it, when you make yourself confront things you want to avoid, it adapts. It grows. It becomes more resilient. Toughness is not about being emotionless. It is about refusing to bow to your emotions. It is about leading yourself through the storm instead of letting the storm lead you. Picture two people living the exact same day. The first person gives in to every impulse. They hit snooze because they feel tired. They skip the workout because they feel unmotivated. They avoid the difficult task because they feel overwhelmed. Their entire life is controlled by their emotional weather. When their mood shifts, their actions shift. When their energy drops, their effort disappears. They live as a passenger, not a driver, carried by whatever feeling happens to show up that day. The second person feels the same impulses, the same fatigue, the same discomfort, the same resistance, but chooses differently. They get up when the alarm rings. They train even when it's inconvenient. They handle the hard task even when doubt appears. Their emotions do not dictate their actions. Their commitments do. And with every act of discipline, they build a layer of toughness that compounds over time, turning them into someone who doesn't crumble when life intensifies. The difference between these two people isn't motivation, it's mental toughness. And toughness is built through discipline. One of the core practices of building mental toughness is learning to act independently of your mood. Most people live as if feelings deserve obedience. They assume that if something feels difficult, it shouldn't be done. But disciplined people understand that feelings are not commands, they're just signals. You don't have to eliminate your feelings, you simply stop obeying them. When you act according to your decisions instead of your emotions, you regain authority over your life. Another key practice is embracing pressure instead of avoiding it. Pressure is not your enemy. It's your training partner. It exposes your weaknesses, amplifies your fears, and challenges your self-belief. But it also strengthens you. Every time you face pressure without collapsing, you grow a little more. You become a little stronger. You earn a little more respect for yourself. Hard moments are not meant to break you. They are meant to reveal what you need to improve. To build mental toughness, you must also learn the skill of consistent self-discipline. This means doing the things you said you would do, at the time you said you would do them, regardless of how you feel when the moment arrives. That integrity, the alignment between your word and your action, is one of the highest forms of strength. When you follow through, you reinforce the identity of someone who can rely on themselves, and that identity becomes the backbone of mental toughness. Another practice is choosing one more rep, one more minute, one more page, one more block of focus. The one more rule is simple but powerful. It trains your brain to push beyond its self-imposed limits. It teaches you that your first impulse to stop is rarely the point where you actually need to stop. The moment you feel like quitting is the moment toughness begins. One more is where resilience is built. There is also the practice of emotional endurance. This means allowing difficult emotions, frustration, fear, anxiety, boredom, discomfort, to exist without running from them. Most people retreat the moment these emotions appear. Tough people sit with them. They allow the emotion to rise and fall without reacting impulsively. This skill separates those who break under stress from those who stay steady. Emotional endurance is the quiet strength that keeps you grounded when your inner world feels chaotic. Mental toughness also requires clarity. Clarity of purpose, clarity of standards, clarity of what you are building. When you know why you're doing something, you can endure much more than you expected. But when you have no clear direction, every challenge feels pointless. Discipline without purpose collapses. But discipline with purpose becomes unstoppable. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal your current relationship with toughness. Where do my emotions control me instead of guide me? When was the last time I did something difficult without complaining or hesitating? What challenge have I been avoiding that would make me stronger if I faced it now? Who would I become if I stopped quitting the moment things got uncomfortable? These questions expose the mental weaknesses you've allowed to grow. Once you expose them, you can change them. Building mental toughness is not glamorous. It doesn't come from motivational speeches or rare heroic moments. It comes from the quiet, uncelebrated decisions you make every day. Waking up when you said you would, finishing tasks you want to avoid, telling yourself the truth, choosing action over feeling, showing up without applause. Toughness is not loud. It is consistent, and here is the most powerful truth of all. Toughness is transferable. When you become mentally strong in one area of your life, it spills into every other area. The discipline you build in the gym shows up in your work. The resilience you build through difficult conversations shows up in your relationships. The ability to push through discomfort shows up in your goals, your habits, your sense of self-worth. Mental toughness becomes the foundation upon which everything else is built. Your life expands or contracts based on your level of resilience. If you avoid difficulty, your world shrinks. If you confront difficulty, your world opens. You no longer live with fear, you live with intention. You no longer crumble under pressure, you rise under it. You no longer seek the path of least resistance. You seek the path that builds the strongest version of you. And remember, discipline is not punishment. Discipline is freedom. The more disciplined you become, the more control you gain over your life. Mental toughness is simply the expression of that discipline under pressure. You have everything you need to become unshakable. It begins with one decision: to stop letting your emotions run your life and start letting your standards run your day. Remember this: mental toughness is built in comfort. It's built every time you choose discipline over impulse, especially when it's hard. Chapter 8. Stop negotiating with your feelings. Most people don't fail because they lack ability. They fail because they negotiate with their feelings. They let emotions vote on everything. When to start, when to stop, when to rest, when to try, when to quit. And the painful truth is simple. If you give your feelings the power to decide your actions, they will always choose the path of least resistance. They will always choose comfort over growth, ease over effort, safety over progress. Feelings care about survival, not improvement, and if you allow them to lead, they will protect you from the discomfort necessary to become who you want to be. The real pain of negotiating with your feelings shows up in the inconsistencies of your life. You know what you need to do, yet you avoid it. You make plans, then abandon them. You set goals, then wait for motivation before taking the next step. And the cycle becomes familiar. Excitement, hesitation, delay, guilt, repeat. When emotions are in charge, discipline becomes optional, progress becomes accidental, and your potential stays locked behind excuses that sound reasonable but are built on fear. You can feel the consequences in your self-respect. The more you obey your feelings, the less you trust yourself. Every time you let comfort override commitment, your identity shifts a little toward weakness. You become someone who avoids, someone who retreats, someone who cannot rely on themselves. And deep down, you know it. That's the cost of negotiating with feelings. It destroys the foundation of self-belief. But here is the truth that sets you free. You don't need to feel like doing something in order to do it. You don't need motivation. You don't need excitement. You don't need emotional alignment. You need standards. You need decisions. You need discipline that overrides your impulses instead of negotiating with them. Imagine you are the captain of a ship. Your feelings are waves. They rise, fall, crash, calm, and change direction without warning. If you base your decisions on waves, you drift aimlessly, tossed by conditions you cannot control. But when you stand firm as the captain, hold the wheel regardless of the storm, you steer with intention, not emotion. That is the essence of stopping the negotiation, reclaiming authority over the ship of your life. Picture 2 mornings. In the first morning, you wake up feeling tired, unmotivated, maybe discouraged. You hit snooze because your feelings say you deserve more rest. You delay your tasks because your feelings want comfort. You avoid hard work because your feelings want ease. And by the end of the day, you have done very little, not because you were incapable, but because you allowed your emotions to negotiate away your standards. In the second morning, you wake up with the same fatigue, the same resistance, the same lack of motivation. But you act anyway. You get up because you said you would. You begin your tasks, not because they feel good, but because they reflect the person you are committed to becoming. You lead your feelings instead of being led by them. By the end of the day, you have built momentum and self-respect. Not because the day was easy, but because you refused to negotiate with the part of you that wanted comfort. That difference, taking action without emotional permission, is the foundation of personal transformation. To stop negotiating with your feelings, you must first understand a simple principle. Your brain is designed to avoid pain, save energy, and seek comfort. That means your emotions will always resist anything that feels difficult, uncertain, or unfamiliar. They will never push you to grow. They will never encourage you to stay uncomfortable long enough to build discipline. So if you wait to feel ready, you will wait forever. The first practice is acting before thinking. Most people give themselves too much time between the impulse to act and the moment they act. In that space, feelings appear, doubt appears, discomfort appears, and negotiation begins. To break this pattern, you remove the space. You act quickly and decisively. When it is time to move, you move. You don't ask how you feel. You don't check your mood. You don't create room for hesitation. Action becomes automatic. The second practice is separating the task from the emotion. You train yourself to say, "My feelings are valid, but they are not in charge." You acknowledge how you feel without allowing it to influence your choice. You can be tired and still work. You can be anxious and still show up. You can be unmotivated and still execute. The ability to act independently of emotion is the essence of maturity. The third practice is raising your standard of what is acceptable. Most people fail because they accept too much weakness from themselves. They allow excuses that should not be allowed. They tolerate inconsistencies that destroy progress. But when you raise your standards, when you say, "I don't miss workouts," or "I finish what I start," or "I honor my schedule whether I feel like it or not," your emotions no longer get a vote. Standards create structure, and structure creates strength. The fourth practice is doing the hard thing first. At the beginning of each day, you choose the task your feelings want to avoid the most, and you do it first. This builds an identity of courage and momentum. You stop allowing avoidance to accumulate. You stop letting fear or discomfort grow throughout the day. You take control before your emotions have time to negotiate. The fifth practice is eliminating emotional loopholes. These are the subtle excuses your mind uses to justify inaction. "I'll start when I feel better. Just this once. I need to rest. Today is too stressful. Tomorrow will be easier." These loopholes are poison. They are deception disguised as self-care. When you eliminate them, you eliminate the hidden doors your emotions use to escape responsibility. The sixth practice is rewriting your identity. When you see yourself as someone who only acts when they feel good, you reinforce weakness. But when you become someone who acts regardless of emotion, you build an identity rooted in strength. You begin thinking of yourself as the type of person who follows through no matter what, and identity always drives behavior. When you identify as someone who does the work, you no longer negotiate with the part of you that resists it. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal where your feelings control your life. Where am I allowing emotion to decide my actions? What commitments have I abandoned because they didn't feel good in the moment? How much stronger would I be if I stopped negotiating and simply executed? What one action can I take today, regardless of how I feel? These questions expose the emotional patterns that sabotage your consistency. And once you see the pattern, you can break it. Life doesn't get easier. You get stronger. But strength is only built when you refuse to let emotions choose your behavior. Every time you act without emotional permission, you reclaim authority. Every time you honor your standards over your feelings, you become more disciplined. Every time you stop negotiating with discomfort, you become more powerful. And something remarkable begins to happen. Your feelings start to follow your actions. Motivation appears after you begin, not before. Confidence grows after you act, not before. Clarity arrives after you move, not before. Emotions that once resisted you begin to align with you because they see the direction you are committed to. Remember this: you don't need to feel ready. You need to stop negotiating with the part of you that wants to stay the same. Chapter 9. Finish what you start. There is a quiet kind of power that separates those who succeed from those who merely try. The power to finish. Most people are great at beginnings, full of motivation, excitement, vision, and energy. But beginnings don't change your life. Finishing does. Starting is easy. Finishing is a skill. And without that skill, you will live in a loop of half-built habits, half-developed potential, and half-finished goals. The real pain of not finishing is subtle, but corrosive. Every unfinished task becomes a weight. Every abandoned goal becomes self-doubt. Every project you start but never complete becomes a message to yourself that you cannot be trusted to follow through. You lose belief not in the task, but in yourself. And once you lose that, staying consistent becomes almost impossible. But here is the truth most people never confront. Your future is not determined by what you start. It is determined by what you finish. Your identity, your confidence, your discipline, your self-respect. All of it grows when you cross the finish line, not when you take the first step. Imagine two versions of yourself. In the first version, you get inspired easily. You make plans. You begin routines. You start projects with enthusiasm. But as soon as the excitement fades, your commitment fades with it. You tell yourself you'll return to it later, but later never comes. Your life becomes a graveyard of unfinished intentions. Workouts half done, goals half executed, ideas half explored. And every unfinished effort chips away at your belief that you are capable of more. In the second version, you commit with intention and you finish with discipline. You understand that desire isn't enough. You know that the point where you want to quit is the very point where finishing matters most. You push through the boredom, the resistance, the discomfort. You cross the finish line, not because it's easy, but because your identity demands it. And over time, you become someone whose results match their promises. The distinction between these two lives has nothing to do with talent. It is entirely about the willingness to finish. To become someone who finishes what they start, you must understand an uncomfortable truth. The middle is where most people fail. The beginning feels exciting. The end feels rewarding. But the middle, the long, repetitive, unglamorous stretch, is where discipline is built and dreams are either strengthened or abandoned. The middle is where emotions fade, resistance grows, and excuses multiply. To master the middle, you must develop practices that carry you from intention to completion. The first practice is clarity of outcome. Many people quit because they don't have a clear picture of what they're building. When the goal is vague, the path becomes uncertain, and uncertainty breeds hesitation. But when your outcome is sharp, defined, specific, meaningful, your mind understands the reason for the work. Clarity gives you direction. Direction fuels consistency. The second practice is shrinking the task until it's impossible to avoid. Consistency dies when a task feels too big. People quit not because they can't do the work, but because the work feels overwhelming. So you break it down, you reduce it, you eliminate friction, you make the habit so small that finishing becomes natural. Small completions compound, and once momentum begins, finishing becomes inevitable. The third practice is eliminating escape routes. Most people quit because quitting is easy. They leave doors open, just in case. If the task becomes uncomfortable, they retreat. To change this pattern, you remove the option of quitting. You burn the bridge behind you. When you commit to a challenge, you see it through. When you start a project, you complete it. When you set a date, you honor it. Removing the exit forces, progress. The fourth practice is emotional neutrality. You can't finish anything if you depend on motivation. Motivation disappears. Discipline remains. To finish, you must learn to work on the days when you don't feel like it. You detach from emotion. You focus on the process. You act regardless of mood. Your standards guide your behavior, not your feelings. That is how real consistency is forged. The fifth practice is building a ritual for completion. Finishing must become a part of your identity, not a rare moment. You create a ritual that signals the end of a task. Reviewing the work, checking it off, acknowledging completion. This ritual trains your mind to crave the finish line. You begin to associate finishing with satisfaction, momentum, and pride. The sixth practice is confronting resistance directly. Resistance always appears near the end. The brain fears completion because completion demands accountability. Once something is finished, it can be judged, it can fail, it can succeed. So the brain creates fear, doubt, and distraction to avoid the emotional risk of finishing. Your job is to recognize that resistance and move through it instead of interpreting it as a sign to stop. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal your patterns of quitting. What have I started in the past year that I have not finished? What story do I tell myself when I quit something early? How much stronger would my life be if I finished just the top 3 things I abandoned? What is the real reason I stop when I'm close to the end? These questions force you to confront the truth. Finishing is not about ability. It is about courage. Courage to see something through. Courage to face the discomfort of the middle. Courage to follow through even when the initial excitement has faded. Finishing builds an internal strength that spills into every area of your life. When you finish tasks, you begin to trust yourself. When you trust yourself, you set bigger goals. When you set bigger goals, you take bigger action. And eventually, finishing becomes your personal standard, not the exception. A life full of completed cycles is a life full of momentum. A life full of abandoned attempts is a life full of regret. You decide which life becomes yours by choosing whether you finish what you start. Finishing transforms you. It gives you evidence of your own capability. It gives you confidence that you can rely on yourself. And it gives you dignity, the kind that comes from doing what you said you would do, even when it was hard. Remember this: anyone can start. Few can finish. Become the person who does. Chapter 10. Repeat until improvement becomes. Your default improvement is not a moment. It is not a breakthrough. It is not a single decision, a sudden transformation, or an emotional surge that magically changes your life overnight. Improvement is repetition. Deliberate, disciplined, unglamorous repetition. It is doing the work again and again until the action becomes automatic, until the identity becomes solid, until the life you once struggled to maintain becomes the life you effortlessly live. Most people never reach their potential, not because they're incapable, but because they stop too early. They begin with excitement, push through the first layer of discomfort, and then retreat the moment the process becomes boring. They crave progress, but they resist repetition. They want change, but they avoid consistency. And they wonder why they stay stuck in the same patterns year after year. The real pain of inconsistency is not the slow progress. It is the constant restart. Every time you stop, you lose momentum. Every time you restart, you rebuild from zero. That cycle destroys self-belief, drains energy, and convinces you that nothing works. When the truth is the opposite, it would have worked if you had simply repeated it long enough. The truth that reshapes everything is simple. Consistency beats intensity, not once, not sometimes. Every single time. Intensity feels exciting, consistency feels boring, intensity burns fast, consistency builds forever. And if you want improvement to become natural, not forced, not sporadic, not fragile, you must master the discipline of repeatability. Imagine improvement as a staircase. Every action is a step upward. If you take a step every day, you rise steadily. But if you climb a few steps and then walk back down, your life becomes a loop instead of a climb. Most people live that loop. They go hard for a week, collapse, restart, go hard again, collapse again. Their life becomes a pattern of enthusiastic beginnings and exhausted returns. Now, picture another version of yourself. Someone who shows up every day. Not perfectly, but consistently. Someone who doesn't chase motivation, but builds routine. Someone who doesn't quit when things get boring because they understand that boredom is part of mastery. Someone who repeats the right actions long enough for those actions to become instinct. That version of you can build anything. To reach that version, you must remove the illusion that improvement is supposed to feel inspiring. Improvement often feels repetitive. It feels predictable. It feels quiet. It feels like doing the same thing again and again when no one notices, when no one claps, when no part of you feels excited. That is the work that transforms a person, the work done without applause. Consistency begins with one principle. Make progress easier than quitting. You do this by creating habits that are simple enough to repeat every day. You shrink the resistance. You reduce the friction. You design your routines with a level of simplicity that makes the habit impossible to avoid. Consistency also requires predictability. Great performers in every field have rituals, not random bursts of effort. They follow the same process at the same time, with the same intention. This predictability removes decision fatigue and strengthens identity. When your routines are automatic, your improvement becomes automatic. But the greatest threat to consistency isn't difficulty. It's emotional interference. Your mind will try to negotiate. It will whisper, "You can skip today," or "You'll make up for it later," or "It doesn't matter if you miss this one time." But discipline is built in the moments when skipping feels justified. Every time you show up despite your feelings, you strengthen the identity of someone who doesn't break commitments. And every time you skip, you weaken it. Think of repetition as the sculptor of your character. Every action you repeat is a chisel strike. Even if the changes are invisible now, the structure is forming. Each repetition cuts away the old version of you and shapes the new one. Picture two lives. In the first life, you are inconsistent. You try something for a few days, then stop. You return weeks later, try again, and drop it once more. You move in circles. Nothing sticks. Nothing compounds. Every goal feels heavy because you're always pushing from the starting line. You feel frustrated and exhausted because you never give yourself enough time to see the results your effort could have produced. In the second life, you choose consistency over intensity. You repeat your behaviors daily, even when they feel small. You don't judge yourself by how fast you improve, but by how reliably you show up. Progress begins to compound. Your habits turn into systems. Your systems turn into identity, and your identity turns into momentum that carries you forward automatically. The difference between these two lives is not talent, luck, or opportunity. It is repetition, steady, discipline to repetition. To make improvement your default, you must embrace the power of monotony. Monotony is where mastery lives. Champions rehearse the same movements thousands of times. Artists sketch the same lines endlessly. Professionals repeat the same fundamentals daily. Repetition is not punishment. It is refinement. Another crucial practice is tracking your streaks. When you can visually see your consistency, it strengthens your commitment. Humans are wired to avoid breaking patterns once they're visible. A calendar marked with days of action becomes a psychological anchor. You don't want to break the chain, so you keep going. Tracking transforms consistency into a personal challenge. You must also learn how to restart immediately. Not tomorrow, not next week, not when things calm down. Immediately. Failing for a day is normal. Failing for a week is costly. Failing for a month is destructive. The sooner you restart, the less momentum you lose. A quick restart is the secret weapon of people who stay consistent long term. Now ask yourself the questions that reveal your patterns. Where have I been choosing intensity over consistency? How many times have I restarted because I quit too soon? What small daily action, if repeated for a year, would change my identity? What habit am I willing to repeat until it becomes automatic? These questions expose the truth. You don't need more inspiration or motivation. You need repetition. You need a system. You need a standard that does not change based on how you feel. There is a moment in every journey where the habit becomes self-sustaining, where the discipline stops feeling forced and starts feeling natural. You might not notice the exact moment it happens, but you will notice the freedom it creates. Your mind becomes steadier. Your actions become automatic. Your direction becomes clear. What once required effort becomes part of who you are. Improvement becomes your default when you stop treating it like an event and start treating it like a lifestyle. You don't need the perfect plan. You don't need the perfect routine. You don't need to feel motivated every day. You need to repeat. Repeat small actions. Repeat the daily disciplines. Repeat the uncomfortable choices. Repeat the standards you set. Repeat until your identity shifts, until your habits are automatic, until effort becomes instinct. Remember this: success isn't built by what you do occasionally. It's built by what you repeat until it becomes who you are. You've reached the end of this journey, but not the end of your transformation. What you've listened to in these chapters isn't theory, inspiration, or passive advice. It is a blueprint, a framework designed to break the old patterns that have been holding you back and replace them with something stronger, sharper, and more intentional. These ideas are not meant to live in your mind. They are meant to shape your behavior, and your behavior is what will shape your future. Look back at everything you've learned. You learned how laziness is not a flaw, but a cycle, and how to break it with the smallest act of discipline. You learned how to control your mind so it no longer drags you into chaos and distraction. You learned how accountability rebuilds your self-respect. You learned how identity is formed through action, not imagination. You learned how distractions weaken your potential and how eliminating them strengthens your focus. You learned the value of doing hard things not as punishment, but as a path to power. You learned that mental toughness is built in silence through decisions that no one sees. You learned to stop negotiating with your feelings because feelings want comfort, not growth. You learned that finishing what you start is the foundation of self-belief. And finally, you learned that repetition, not intensity, is what transforms your life. These principles are simple, but not easy. They demand commitment. They require repetition. They ask you to look at yourself honestly, without excuses, without escape routes, without illusion. But if you apply them, truly apply them, you will become someone different, someone stronger, someone more disciplined, someone who moves with intention instead of emotion. Think for a moment about the future version of yourself, the one who practices these principles consistently. That version of you wakes up with clarity. They act based on standards, not moods. They set goals and finish them. They follow through when others quit. They handle pressure with calm confidence. They are not perfect, but they are steady. They are intentional. They are powerful. They do not wait for life to get easier. They get stronger. They do not hope for change. They create it. And the best part is this: that version of you is not far away. It is one disciplined day away, one small action away, one decision away. Change doesn't happen in the future. It happens now. In the moment you choose to apply what you've learned. So let this outro be the beginning of your next chapter. Let it be the moment where everything you've absorbed turns into action. Let it be the moment where your identity catches up to your potential. Let it be the moment where you stop living like the old version of yourself and begin living like the person you know you can become. From this point forward, your life is shaped by the standards you set, not the feelings you entertain. When the urge to quit appears, remember that the old version of you would quit, but the new version finishes. When discomfort hits, remember that discomfort is not a warning. It is a sign that you are on the right path. When your mind tries to drift, bring it back. When your emotions try to negotiate, hold your ground. When excuses appear, recognize them for what they are: remnants of the person you are leaving behind. There will be days when you don't feel strong, days when you feel tired, overwhelmed, unfocused. That's normal. That's human. But those days are the ones that matter most. Because when you act even on those days, you prove to yourself that your discipline is real. You prove that your identity has shifted. You prove that you no longer need perfect circumstances to take meaningful action. You cannot control everything in your life, but you can control how you show up. And how you show up determines who you become. The choices you make in the next 24 hours will define your momentum for the next 24 days and the next 24 months and the next 24 years. So take a breath. Stand tall. Feel the weight of your potential and honor it. Start today. Start small. Start now. Choose one action, one that aligns with the strongest version of you. Do it with intention. Do it with discipline. Do it without negotiating. Then repeat it tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Keep stacking the repetitions until discipline becomes natural, until improvement becomes automatic, until the life you dream about becomes the life you live. This is your moment. Not the moment to think, not the moment to wait, the moment to act. You've learned how to force yourself to improve your life. Now go prove to yourself that you can.